The surveillance operation had been running smoothly for 7 days when everything changed in an instant. FBI Special Agent Emma Rodriguez, maintaining deep cover as the owner of Rose and Lily Florist, had been providing critical intelligence on the target area while other federal teams prepared for the expected terrorist attack. Her position across from the federal building gave her perfect oversight of all approaches and potential target zones, and for a week she had coordinated with other undercover agents positioned throughout downtown Portland. When the bomb was finally discovered on Thursday morning, Emma's role should have been simple: maintain her civilian cover and provide observational support while the bomb squad handled the technical aspects. But as she watched the FBI disposal team approach the device using completely wrong procedures, Emma faced the most difficult decision of her career. Her 8 years of experience defusing roadside bombs in Afghanistan told her that dozens of people were about to die unless someone with actual bomb disposal expertise took action. The choice was simple but impossible: maintain her cover and watch her colleagues trigger a catastrophic explosion, or reveal her true qualifications and save lives, while potentially destroying a major federal operation. Because Emma Rodriguez wasn't just any FBI agent. She was the most qualified person in a 4-block radius to handle the device that was about to kill everyone she had spent a week protecting. This is the story of how sometimes the most dangerous situations require the most difficult choices, and how the skills we try to leave behind have a way of finding us when we need them most. 7 days earlier, FBI Special Agent Emma Rodriguez had received her assignment in a sterile conference room at the Portland field office. The briefing was classified, the threat was credible, and the timeline was uncertain. Intelligence indicates a terrorist cell is planning to target the federal building within the next week. Special Agent in charge Michael Torres had explained to the assembled team, "We don't know when, we don't know how, but we know they've been conducting surveillance and we believe they're in the final stages of preparation." Emma studied the aerial photographs of downtown Portland spread across the conference table. Her eyes automatically identified sightlines, escape routes, and tactical advantages, habits formed during years of analyzing hostile terrain in Afghanistan. "Agent Rodriguez, you'll be taking over the flower shop at 4 South 412 Main Street," Torres continued. "The owner is cooperating with the investigation and will be temporarily relocated. Your cover story is that you're the owner's cousin, managing the shop while she visits family out of state." Emma nodded, already mentally preparing for deep cover operations. After 3 years with the FBI, she had become skilled at assuming civilian identities and maintaining them under pressure. What her colleagues didn't know was that her ability to remain calm in high-stress situations came from experience that predated her law enforcement career. The shop provides direct visual contact with the federal building entrance and plaza area, Torres added. "You'll coordinate with other surveillance units positioned throughout the target zone, but your primary responsibility is observation and intelligence gathering." Over the next 6 hours, Emma transformed herself from federal agent to small business owner. She studied the flower shop's inventory, learned the names of regular customers, and memorized details about the fictional cousin whose identity she was assuming. By evening, she was arranging roses and baby's breath with the competence of someone who had been doing it for years. What she didn't tell her FBI colleagues was that flower arranging required many of the same skills as bomb disposal: steady hands, attention to detail, and the ability to work precisely under pressure. The routine developed quickly. Emma opened the shop each morning at 8 a.m., maintaining normal business operations while conducting surveillance through the large front windows. Other federal agents had positioned themselves throughout the area. Agent Parker was working construction on a building renovation project. Agent Yamamoto had taken over a coffee cart on the corner, and Agent Sullivan was posing as a homeless veteran with a strategic view of all pedestrian approaches. Emma's flower shop became the unofficial coordination center for the operation. Agents would stop by throughout the day, ostensibly purchasing flowers but actually receiving updates and sharing intelligence. The shop's location provided perfect oversight of the federal building's main entrance, employee parking area, and the public plaza where crowds gathered during lunch breaks. By day 3, Emma had identified several suspicious individuals who appeared to be conducting their own surveillance. A man with a telephoto lens claiming to be an architecture photographer. A woman who sat on the same bench every day reading different books but never turning pages. A maintenance worker who spent an unusual amount of time checking manholes and utility access points. "We've got eyes on 3 potential hostiles," Emma reported during the daily briefing, all showing classic surveillance behavior patterns. They're studying our security response times and looking for vulnerabilities in the perimeter. What Emma didn't mention was that her ability to identify hostile surveillance came from months of training to recognize similar behavior patterns in Afghanistan, where the difference between a curious civilian and a potential bomber could mean the difference between life and death. By day 5, the surveillance had intensified on both sides. The terrorist cell was clearly in the final stages of planning, and federal agents were maintaining round-the-clock observation. Emma slept in the apartment above the flower shop, allowing her to monitor the area even during off hours. On day 6, everything changed. Emma noticed the manholes. Someone had been accessing the utility tunnels beneath the federal building. The maintenance worker she had been tracking wasn't conducting surveillance. He was preparing infrastructure for an underground approach. The bomb wouldn't be delivered to the building. It was already underneath it. Emma made the call that probably saved hundreds of lives. All units, this is Florist. We need to check the substructure immediately. I believe the device is already in place. The search of the utility tunnels beneath the federal building began at 6 a.m. on Thursday morning. Emma maintained her position in the flower shop, providing oversight and coordination while federal teams conducted the underground investigation. At 10:47 a.m., her radio crackled with the confirmation she had been dreading. Florist, this is Underground 1. We have found the device. Repeat, explosive device confirmed in the main utility corridor. Emma's blood ran cold. Through her shop window, she could see hundreds of people going about their normal morning routines, completely unaware that a massive bomb was sitting directly beneath their feet. Underground 1, describe the device, came the voice of the bomb disposal supervisor over the radio. Large cylindrical package, multiple wires, digital timing display currently showing 47 minutes and counting down. Appears to be professionally constructed. Emma felt the familiar rush of adrenaline that she hadn't experienced since leaving Afghanistan. 47 minutes to evacuate the area and neutralize the threat. In a war zone, that would have been a luxury. In downtown Portland, with thousands of civilians in the immediate area, it was nowhere near enough time. All units, begin immediate evacuation procedures, came the order from the command center. Bomb disposal team is on. Emma watched through her window as federal agents began the complex process of clearing the area without causing panic. It was a delicate balance. Move too slowly and people would die. Move too quickly and the evacuation itself could cause casualty. But Emma's trained eye told her there was a bigger problem developing. The FBI bomb disposal team was approaching the device using procedures that would work for domestic terrorist devices, but were completely wrong for military-grade explosives. She had seen dozens of similar devices in Afghanistan. She knew exactly how they were constructed, how they functioned, and most importantly, how they could be safely neutralized. The question was whether she could break her cover and intervene without compromising an investigation that had taken months to develop. At 11:15 a.m., Emma made a decision that would change her career forever. She activated her secure radio and contacted the bomb disposal supervisor directly. Disposal 1. This is Agent Rodriguez from surveillance position. I need to speak with you immediately about the device configuration. Rodriguez, maintain your position and continue observation duties. Disposal team has this handled. Sir, with respect, I don't think they do. I have experience with this type of device and the approach they're using is going to trigger detonation. There was a long pause on the radio. Rodriguez, what kind of experience? Emma took a deep breath. 8 years of EOD work in Afghanistan, sir. I've defused over 200 IEDs, including several that appear to be identical to what you found. Another pause, longer this time. Rodriguez, your file says you joined the Bureau directly from college. There's no mention of military service, because I specifically requested that my military background be classified when I joined the FBI. But right now, that background might be the only thing that prevents mass casualties. The radio went silent for nearly a minute. Emma could see evacuation teams working frantically to clear the area, but she knew they would never be able to move enough people far enough away in time. Finally, a new voice came on the radio. Agent Rodriguez, this is Sac Torres. I need you to explain exactly what you think is wrong with our current approach. Emma looked at the clock on her shop wall. 31 minutes remaining. Sir, the device appears to be constructed using Soviet-era components with modern digital triggers. Standard FBI disposal procedures assume domestic construction methods and American components. If they try to cut the wrong wire or approach the timer mechanism incorrectly, they'll trigger a fail-safe detonation that's designed to prevent exactly the kind of disposal they're attempting. How do you know this? Because I've seen this exact configuration before in Afghanistan. The terrorist cell isn't domestic. They're using bomb-making techniques developed for asymmetric warfare against American forces. Your disposal team is trained for criminal bombers, not military engineers. Another pause. What do you recommend? Emma closed her eyes and accessed memories she had tried to bury for years. The smell of cordite and burning metal. The weight of the protective suit. The absolute silence that came with knowing that one wrong move would kill not just herself but everyone depending on her expertise. I recommend you let me handle it, sir. 23 minutes remained when Emma Rodriguez shed her cover identity for the second time in her life. The first time had been in Afghanistan, when she had transitioned from college graduate to combat engineer. This time, she was transitioning from undercover FBI agent to bomb disposal expert. The utility tunnel beneath the federal building was cramped, humid, and filled with the kind of tactical tension that Emma remembered from her military service. FBI agents had established a perimeter around the device, but none of them had approached closer than 50 feet. Emma changed into a borrowed bomb disposal suit that was newer and more sophisticated than anything she had used in Afghanistan. But the fundamentals were the same. Approach slowly, assess carefully, and never make assumptions about what you're seeing. The device was exactly what she had expected based on the radio descriptions. A cylindrical explosive charge surrounded by ball bearings and metal fragments designed to maximize casualties. Digital timer counting down with mechanical precision. Multiple wire configurations that would trigger detonation if approached incorrectly. But Emma could also see details that the other agents had missed. The specific type of electrical tape used on the connections, the particular brand of digital time, the distinctive method of securing the triggering mechanism. She had seen all of these elements before, in various combinations, in devices constructed by insurgents who had been trained by former Soviet military engineers. Disposal control. This is Rodriguez. I have visual confirmation on the device. Configuration matches Soviet-era IED construction, with digital timing modifications. Estimated yield based on size and apparent explosive type is approximately 50 pounds of C4 equivalent. Rodriguez, what's your assessment for disposal? Emma studied the device carefully, noting every wire, every connection, every potential trigger mechanism. The device has 3 separate fail-safe systems designed to prevent tampering. Standard cutting procedures will trigger immediate detonation. I need to approach this using techniques developed specifically for Soviet-era booby traps. Time remaining? Emma glanced at the timer. 18 minutes 43 seconds. Proceed with extreme caution. Emma began the methodical process that had kept her alive through dozens of similar situations in Afghanistan. First, identify the primary explosive charge and determine the most likely detonation method. Second, trace all visible wiring and identify potential trigger mechanisms. Third, locate the fail-safe systems and determine the correct sequence for neutralization. The work required absolute concentration and steady hand. One wrong move, one moment of inattention, one incorrect assumption about the device's construction, and everything within a quarter-mile radius would be destroyed. But Emma had learned these skills in situations where the stakes were just as high and the time pressure was just as intense. The only difference was that this time she was working alone instead of with a team, and she was wearing an FBI badge instead of military tags. 15 minutes remaining. Emma had successfully identified the primary trigger mechanism and 2 of the 3 fail-safe systems. The device was more sophisticated than most of the IEDs she had encountered in Afghanistan, but the basic principles were the same. 12 minutes remaining. The first failsafe had been neutralized using a technique that involved shorting out the electrical current without triggering the backup detonation system. Emma's hands moved with the muscle memory developed through years of life-or-death practice. 8 minutes remaining. The second failsafe proved more challenging, requiring Emma to access components that were deliberately difficult to reach. The device's constructor had assumed that anyone attempting disposal would be working with robotic equipment rather than human hands. 5 minutes remaining. Emma reached the final fail-safe system, which was the most dangerous because it was designed to detonate the device if anyone successfully bypassed the first two protection systems. This was the moment when everything depended on her understanding of Soviet military engineering principles and her ability to think like the person who had constructed the device. 2 minutes remaining. Emma's hands were steady as she approached the final sequence of steps that would either save hundreds of lives or end her own. The timer continued its relentless countdown, but she blocked out everything except the immediate task in front of her. 30 seconds remaining. Emma cut the final wire. The timer stopped at 00:00:17. The silence that followed was the most beautiful sound she had ever heard. The debriefing lasted 6 hours and involved officials from every level of federal law enforcement. Emma sat in the same conference room where she had received her assignment 7 days earlier. But everything was different now. Agent Rodriguez, Saxa Torres began. We need to understand why your military background was classified in your personnel file and why you didn't disclose relevant experience when you were assigned to this operation. Emma had been dreading this conversation for 3 years, since the day she had decided to join the FBI without revealing her EOD background. Sir, when I left the military, I wanted to completely separate from that part of my life. I had seen enough combat and handled enough explosive devices. I wanted to serve my country in a different capacity, without having to relive experiences from Afghanistan. But you understand that withholding relevant qualifications could have compromised the operation. Yes, sir. And I also understand that revealing those qualifications was the only way to prevent mass casualties. I made the decision I thought was right under the circumstances. Torres studied the official report spread across the table. The device you neutralized was sophisticated enough that our standard disposal procedures would almost certainly have triggered detonation. Your intervention saved an estimated 200-300 lives and prevented the destruction of a federal building. Emma nodded but didn't respond. She was still processing the reality of having returned to bomb disposal work after convincing herself that she had left it permanently behind. We've been in contact with your former commanding officers in Afghanistan, Torres continued. Your military record is impressive. Bronze Star, Purple Heart, over 200 successful EOD operations in hostile territory. Why didn't you want the FBI to know about this background? Emma was quiet for a long moment before answering. Because I've seen what happens to people who are defined by their military service. They get typecast, assigned to roles based on their war experience, rather than their current capabilities. I wanted to be valued as an investigator and an agent, not as a former bomb disposal expert. And now I suppose both parts of my background are going to be relevant to my career whether I want them to be or not. Torres closed the file and looked at Emma directly. Agent Rodriguez, the Bureau is prepared to offer you a position with our domestic terrorism unit, focusing specifically on cases involving military-grade explosive devices. Your unique combination of EOD experience and investigative training makes you exceptionally qualified for this type of work. Emma considered the offer carefully. For 3 years she had been trying to build a career that had nothing to do with bombs or combat or the memories she carried from Afghanistan. But the events of the past week had demonstrated that sometimes the skills you try to leave behind are exactly the skills the world needs you to use. Sir, I'll accept the position on one condition, which is, I want to develop training programs that teach standard FBI disposal teams how to handle military-grade devices. If we're going to face more threats like this one, our people need to understand the differences between domestic and military construction methods. Torres nodded. Agreed. Anything else? Emma looked around the conference room where she had spent so many hours over the past week, planning an operation that had ultimately required her to become someone she had tried not to be. I want to keep my flower shop. Torres looked confused. I'm sorry? The cover identity worked perfectly. Rose and Lily Florist provided ideal surveillance opportunities, and allowed me to integrate into the community in a way that traditional law enforcement positioning couldn't match. I'd like to maintain the shop as a permanent surveillance post for future operations. You want to actually run a flower shop while working as a federal agent? Emma smiled for the first time in days. Sir, after spending 8 years defusing bombs in Afghanistan and 1 week watching federal agents make tactical errors, I think arranging flowers might be exactly the kind of peaceful, creative work I need to stay balanced. And if we need your EOD expertise again, then I'll handle whatever needs to be handled. But in between those situations, I'll be arranging wedding bouquets and funeral wreaths, helping people celebrate the most important moments in their lives. Torres marked something in his notes. Agent Rodriguez, I think that might be the most sensible career plan I've heard in 20 years of federal service. The Rose and Lily Florist had become one of the most successful small businesses in downtown Portland. Though most customers had no idea that their flower arrangements were being created by an FBI agent with a Bronze Star for Valor in Afghanistan. Emma had found an unexpected peace in the routine of running a legitimate flower shop while maintaining her readiness for federal operation. The skills required for both jobs were more similar than she had expected. Attention to detail, steady hands under pressure, and the ability to create beauty from raw material. Her new position with the FBI's Domestic Terrorism Unit had already involved 3 cases requiring her specialized knowledge of military-grade explosive devices. In each case, her ability to think like both a bomb maker and a federal investigator had proved invaluable. But perhaps more importantly, Emma had stopped trying to separate the different parts of her identity. She was a former combat engineer, a current FBI agent, and a small business owner who happened to be exceptionally good at arranging flowers. All of these roles were part of who she was, and each one informed the others in ways that made her more effective at everything she did. On a quiet Tuesday afternoon, Emma was working on centerpieces for a wedding reception, when her secure phone rang with the tone that indicated a priority call from FBI headquarters. Rodriguez. Agent Rodriguez, this is SAC Torres. We have a situation developing in Seattle. Suspected military-grade device. Unknown configuration. Minimal time for traditional disposal procedures. Emma looked around her flower shop, at the arrangements she was creating, at the peaceful environment she had built, at the life that represented everything she had wanted when she left Afghanistan. Then she looked at the small American flag she kept beside the cash register, and at the photograph of her former EOD team that she had finally allowed herself to display. Sir, I can be there in 4 hours. Do we have any intelligence on the device configuration? Preliminary reports suggest Soviet-era components, with modern triggering mechanisms. Sound familiar? Emma was already mentally preparing for the transition from florist to federal agent, to bomb disposal expert. Very familiar, sir. I'll bring my kit. As Emma prepared to leave her shop in the capable hands of her assistant manager, she reflected on the path that had led her from the mountains of Afghanistan to the streets of Portland, to wherever her expertise would be needed next. She had learned that you can't really leave behind the skills that define you, and that sometimes the most important service comes from combining different types of expertise in unexpected ways. Most importantly, she had discovered that there was room in one life for multiple identities. The soldier who had served in combat, the agent who protected civilians, and the small business owner who created beauty in the world. All of these roles were part of the same mission, making sure that people could live their lives safely, peacefully, and surrounded by the kind of beauty that made life worth protecting. Emma Rodriguez locked the door of her flower shop and headed toward whatever crisis required her unique combination of skills. Behind her, the smell of roses and baby's breath lingered in the air, a reminder that even in a world filled with threats and violence, there was always room for beauty, growth, and hope. Sometimes the most dangerous skills are also the most necessary ones. Sometimes the people who can handle the worst situations are the ones who choose to spend their peaceful moments creating something beautiful. And sometimes the best preparation for facing tomorrow's threats is knowing that you can always come home to a place where life grows, blooms, and continues in defiance of everything that tries to destroy it. Real security stories, where every hero has a story and every story matters.